You're listening to the Patenting for Inventors podcast with registered patent attorney, Dr. Adam Diamond, founder of Diamond Patent Law, the #1 source for securing your intellectual property needs. Now, here's your host, Adam Diamond.
Hello and welcome to the Patenting for Inventors podcast, episode 35, How to File a PCT Application. My name is Dr. Adam Diamond, a registered patent attorney and founder and owner of Diamond Patent Law in Los Angeles, California. I can be contacted through my website at diamondpatentlaw.com. That's DIAMENT, patentlaw.com. Or if that's too hard to remember, you can get to it through patentingforinventors.com. That's patentingforinventors.com. Or call me at 424-281-0162. And while most attorneys can only practice in states where they're members of that state's bar, patent attorneys can actually practice patent law in any state. So feel free to contact me regardless of where you live. Before I start this episode, I just wanted to say that I told my daughter that I do a podcast about patents, and her response was, "That's boring." And sometimes she's right. There are some aspects of the patenting process and inventing that are really interesting, and some parts that are boring. There's a lot of filling out of forms to get a patent, and it's hard to make filling out forms really exciting, especially in a podcast. So I'm giving you an apology up front because sometimes it's just not possible to make everything about your invention and patenting fun and interesting. There are going to be parts that are boring and uninteresting, and this episode is probably going to be one of those. So you just have to grin and bear it if you want to file a PCT application and if you want to do the filling out of forms the right way. In the last couple episodes, I talked about what PCT applications are and what changes you should make compared to your US application. I'm assuming that you filed your US application first, but that's not required. For this episode, I'm assuming that you're going to file with the US Receiving Office. PCT applications can be filed all over the world. Certain countries or regions are called receiving offices, meaning that they can receive a PCT application. The receiving offices then send the information to what's called the International Bureau, which is kind of like a central repository for PCT applications that have been filed in countries throughout the world. You can also file your PCT application directly with the International Bureau, which is in Switzerland, but I recommend doing the filing with the United States Patent and Trademark Office if you've already set yourself up as a registered e-filer. It will just make it easier if you haven't already set yourself up with a World Intellectual Property Organization account. There's some times where maybe you wouldn't be allowed to file with the USPTO Receiving Office. The main reason you might not be allowed to file your PCT application with the US Receiving Office is that in order to use the US Receiving Office, at least one of the applicants has to be a US national or resident. If not, you can't file with the USPTO, and you'll either have to file directly with the International Bureau or some other country where you qualify. I'm not going to go into those situations. Technically, even if no one is a national or resident of the US and you file a PCT application with the USPTO, it's not like you won't get that filing date. They're just going to forward it to the International Bureau for processing instead of keeping it with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. I'm just going to keep this simple and assume that you're allowed to file with the USPTO Receiving Office. The main thing that is different about a PCT filing compared to a US filing is what's called the request form, and it's form PCT RO 101. This is a form that has to be filled out, and it goes over the applicant and information about you and the invention. It's similar to the information that you put down in the US application called the application data sheet. There's a way to create a digital version of the request, and it makes a request zip file that you can upload to the patent office. You can do it two ways, through something called PCT Safe or PCT Easy, which is some software you can download. I found it not very intuitive. The other way of doing it is using something called ePCT, which is through WIPO, and I think it's much more user-friendly. And if you make the request through one of these two, it will tell you if you're entering things that are wrong. It's not foolproof, but it does catch some things, like it will tell you if you forgot to put in your address in the form or not. To use ePCT, you do have to set up a WIPO account and get a digital certificate, and you can do that, and I recommend it. But I'm just going to go through the regular request form that's a PDF that you can download. And if you want to use one of the electronic methods, you can do that. The information is all the same, but instead you would just enter it on the WIPO website. You do get a small discount on the fees when you submit your PCT application if you created it digitally on ePCT or PCT Easy. But if you're going to be spending lots of time trying to figure out how to do it and set up accounts, then it's probably not worth it. So you'll want to go to the Patent Office website and do a search for the PCT request form. The form number, as I mentioned, is PCT RO 101. Currently, it's 24 pages, and each place on the page, there are numbered boxes, which I'm going to go through, and how to put in each thing in each box. But if you go to page 14 on the PDF, They actually go through all the same things that I'm talking about in this episode and how to fill out each box. So it's not exactly 24 pages, even though the document itself looks like it's 24. A lot of it is just instructions. I'm going to go into less detail than the form, and if you're still confused about what to put in, start reading the notes that start on page 14 of the PDF. So let's go through the boxes. On the top of the form is information about the application number, filing date, name of receiving office. You don't put any of that in. You have an option of putting in a file number below that. Attorneys often do that, but you don't need to. Then we have box 1, which is the title of the invention. Pretty simple. It's supposed to be between 2 and 7 words. For box 2, it says application, and you'll see a checkbox next to that where it says, this person is also the inventor. The applicant can be a company or it can be an individual inventor. If the individual inventor is also the applicant, then check that box. If you're filing under a company, then don't check that box. Put in the applicant address, phone number, fax number, registration number at the patent office if you have that, but there's a good chance that you don't have that. For email authorization, click the box and put in your email. It's recommended that you put the last name in all capital letters and other parts of the name or company not in capital letters. You can check a box if you only want to be contacted by email or if you also want paper notifications. I wouldn't check the box that says exclusively in electronic form because there's no harm to getting things mailed by paper as well as getting it through email. You don't want to miss something just because it got sent to your junk folder, so you may as well get it by regular mail as well. You put in your nationality and state of residence. I check the box that says all designated states and not the box that says states indicated on the supplemental box. By designating all states, you're giving yourself the opportunity to later apply in countries that are all part of the PCT treaty, instead of just the selected specific ones. I don't really see any advantages to limiting yourself right now because it doesn't cost anymore. For box 3, if there are multiple inventors or applicants, you have to check the box and enter the information about the other inventors. If you're filling out where the applicant is a company and you listed the company information above, you also have to list information about the inventor and you use a continuation sheet for that. In box 4, you have to give the name, address, phone number, and the person you're using to handle the application. If it's an attorney or agent, you can check the agent box. If it's a common representative, so maybe it's one of the inventors, you can check that box. A common representative might also be one of the applicants. You enter the same information about email correspondence. If you're using an agent or common representative, you could put in an address of where to send the correspondence. There's no reason not to pick a common representative, and it could just cause problems later if you don't. So pick someone, an agent if you have an attorney. But if you have an attorney, the attorney should be the one that's filling this out himself or herself. And if you don't have an attorney, pick the main contact person for the application. For box 5, don't check any of the boxes in box 5. They only apply if you filed your original application in Germany, Japan, or Korea. I'm not going to go into the reasons why you would check these if you did, but I'm assuming that you're filing a U.S. application or you already filed one first or you're filing this in the U.S. Receiving Office. So this part doesn't apply. Box 6 is where you put in the information about your earlier filed U.S. application if you did one. You put in the filing date and application number. You'll see 3 boxes next to the application number, and most likely, if you just filed the U.S. application, you'll write in U.S., and under the heading it says National Application, Country or Member of WTO. Leave the other boxes blank. If you filed a provisional application, you'll want to put that in too. Then there's a section called Furnishing the Priority Documents. What this means is that if you have priority documents like your earlier applications, the International Bureau is going to need those documents. You can either have the U.S. Receiving Office send it, or you can have the International Bureau retrieve it. Either way, the documents should get there. But I have the International Bureau retrieve it. You'll see these spaces where you can put in an access code. The access code is the 4-digit number you got when you filed your U.S. application, which the U.S. calls the confirmation code. So hopefully you kept your receipt and you have those numbers. Then there's a section that says if you want to restore the right of priority. If you're filing this by the 12-month deadline, you can leave this blank. I'm not going to go over what happens if you miss the deadline. There is a 2-month grace period where maybe you could still file a Pct application, but you have to give reasons, and it's not something you want to do. I've only had to do it once, and it was allowed, but don't miss the 12-month deadline for your U.S. application going into a PCT, and you don't need to worry about restoring the right of priority. Box 7 is the International Searching Authority. When you file a PCT application, you'll have a PCT examiner examine your application. But just because you filed your PCT application in the U.S. doesn't mean you're going to have a U.S. PCT examiner do the searching and examining. You can select which countries you want to do the search and examination. Some attorneys think that some countries have better trained examiners and the search report is better and more respected. I generally put in the US after where it says ISA. Different countries also charge different amounts, so that can be a factor on which country you want to pick. Currently, there are 15 countries. A lot of people pick Europe or Korea or the US. Europe is more expensive, but there are some advantages later on if you end up wanting to get a European patent, because you've already had a European PCT examiner review your application. And it might be the same examiner that you might get later, so you'll get an easier review in Europe. But Europe is also known for being harder to get a positive patentability report, so it's kind of a double-edged sword. Also for Box 7, there's an option for the PCT examiner to use an earlier search that you may have gotten, let's say, in your US application. There's a good chance you haven't received any examination from the US by the time you filed your PCT application, and so you wouldn't check this box. But if you got a positive patentability opinion for your US application, you can put in that application number and also submit the search results to the PCT examiner. There's a box if your earlier application was filed in a different language, but that probably doesn't apply. Then there's a section about how the search results are going to be submitted, and there are 5 boxes. You don't need to check any of these. If you filed the US application and you're also using the USPTO as the receiving office for your PCT application. You might have to supply some copies of the search report if you're doing some things in Europe or some other country for your PCT application, but if you originally filed in the US or maybe some other scenario, then you don't need to do this. Below that, you'll see a box where you can request the receiving office to transmit the International Searching Authority a copy of the results. What this means is that you can have the USPTO Receiving Office forward the search results on their own besides just having the International Bureau request them. But if you don't have any search results, then you wouldn't check this box. The next is Box 8. These are declarations. Technically, declarations don't need to be signed for the PCT application because it never turns into a patent. But once you enter the national stage after the PCT, then those countries may require different kinds of declarations, and it's easier to do all the declarations at once with the PCT than have to do them separately for each country later. There are 5 declaration types, and you might not need all of them. There's a declaration as to the identity of the inventor, a declaration about why the applicant is entitled to apply for a patent. Maybe the applicant is a company, and the company is entitled to apply because the inventor was an employee. Then there's a declaration about if you're claiming priority to an earlier application and why you're entitled to do that. There's a declaration specifically for the United States, but if you filed the US application first and you did a declaration for that, you don't need to do a new one. And there's a declaration about non prejudicial disclosures. This is about maybe you disclose your invention already, but for some specific reason, that disclosure shouldn't be used against you. Maybe you disclose your invention at a scientific conference, and certain countries have rules that those disclosures at a conference can't be used against you when you file your application if you file it within a certain time frame. If you're doing the request on paper, you do have to cut and paste certain wording from certain rules in the request, and you can find out what all that wording is by looking at the request form itself. It says where to get it. It will tell you what PCT rule you need, and then basically you just cut and paste the wording from there, and you put in specifics about your situation. If you're doing this in the electronic version, the wording should already be done automatically. As I said, filling out those declarations isn't required, but it makes it easier later on, because if you do it right in the PCT, you don't need to do individual declarations for each country later on. So if you're on the paper version, the PDF, we're on what is now page 12 of the request, and it's just a checklist, and it's called Box 9. There's something similar in the electronic version as well. The first part is about how many pages your filing will be. PCT applications have a standard fee if they're 30 pages or less, but that includes the request form so it can add up quickly. You'll want to put in the number of pages for the request, the description, the claims, the abstract, the drawings, and everything else, so it can add up. You also put in what figure you want to be on the first page of your application, so when people search for your patent application, they can see the figure that most represents your invention. There's also a checklist on the page for fee calculations, power of attorney, citing priority documents, translation, and some other things. The last box is Box 10, which is the signature of the applicant, agent, or common representative. And that's it for the form. You can do the paper form, but I recommend doing ePCT on WIPO, but you do have to set up a WIPO account, as I mentioned. You would go to pct.wipo.int/ePCT and set it up. Once you have an account, you can do this whole thing in a web-based form, which makes it a lot easier. When you're done with the form, there will be a zip file of the request that you create, and the zip file will have some other documents in there as well that are all uploaded. Also, if you do ePCT, there's a little bit of a discount compared to if you do the paper-based or PDF way. even if you file the paper-based form electronically, there's still a reduced fee by doing the ePCT version. So now we're at the filing part. And if you're going to be filing in the U.S. Receiving Office, it's going to be pretty similar to the way we did it for a U.S. filing. You would register with the USPTO to be a registered e-filer and go back to listen to that episode about how to do that. You log on to your account of the USPTO. You have to use all the credentials that you set up with to get your digital certificate. On the first screen, you certify that you're the certificate holder, and you click the button that says New Application. Then you get a new menu, and you'll select International Application PCT for filing in the U.S. Receiving Office. You click Next. On the next screen, you type in some information about your application, such as the title of the invention, the docket number you may have created for it, the applicant's name, such as a person's name or an entity, such as a company. You put in your customer number and the correspondence address. Next, you go to the screen where you can upload your documents. You do this the same way you did your U.S. application. There's a button to check either yes or no if you're attaching a PCT Easy zip file. If you created a zip file using ePCT or PCT Safe, then click yes. But if you filled out the form manually on a PDF, then click no. To upload, the order doesn't really matter, but I'd upload your request first. If you clicked yes to the zip file, the first thing you have to upload is the zip file. If you click no, go down to the section that says Files to be submitted. To upload the request, click the Choose File button and select the file. Then there's a drop-down menu for categories, but you don't need to select the categories because they're actually less than 30 document descriptions and it's easy to find the type of document. For the zip file, select RO/101 if you're uploading the PDF of your request form. I like to click Upload and Validate after each file to make sure it's okay. Then add a file for your actual application. I like to have one PDF file that has my specification, the claims, and the abstract, and then select that the file has multiple documents. And then you can type in which pages are for which section, and the document description should be either specification, claims, and abstract for the 3 different parts. If you have a power of attorney, upload that document. Upload your PDF of your drawings file. If you're a microentity, upload the document like your U.S. application. Listen to my other episode if you want to know whether or not you are a microentity. If you have declarations that weren't part of your request, you can upload them. There's some other documents you might want to upload in certain situations, but I'm just doing a basic standard PCT application. Once you uploaded all the files, click the Continue button. Next, you'll get to a Calculate Fees page. First, click whether you're a large, small, or micro entity. Listen to my episode on entity status if you want to know what you might qualify for. The cost on the screen will update if you click those. For the fees, you'll want to click the transmittal fee, and currently if you're a small entity, it's $120. Click the search fee. There are a few different kinds of search fee options. The standard one is you just have the U.S. act as the international searching authority. So unless you have a reason to pick another one, and there are reasons that I mentioned that you might want to, but I'm going to keep this simple, just click that one. Currently, it's $1,040 for a small entity. Then you'll click the international filing fee. There's some options, and if you created a zip file of the request using ePCT or PCT Easy, you'll click the option that says filed electronically with ePCT or PCT Easy. Currently, it's $1,161 for a small entity. It's basically $205 off than if you did the paper filing, and it's $102 off if you filed electronically, but you made the request using the PDF instead of doing it through PCT Easy or ePCT. You'll also have to add $15 for every page over 30 pages. And that's not just your application, as I mentioned, but it includes all the documents you filed, such as the request, powers of attorney, declarations, and things like that. These fees change, but it's all done automatically if you file electronically. So at a minimum, if you're a small entity, it's going to be $2,321 in PCT fees. If you're a micro entity, it's a little bit cheaper, $1,741. But it's usually going to be a little bit more than that because your application is probably going to be more than 30 pages once you include all the figures and request forms and everything else. After you click Submit, you have to make payments. So click to make payment, just like a U.S. application, and paying with credit card is probably the easiest way to do it. And when you do that, you'll get an e-filing receipt with your PCT application number and receipt of payment. Save the receipt, and you're done with the filing. I'll cover what to do after filing in later episodes. Now, this podcast is geared towards small inventors that want to do their own application. But really, if you're filing international applications, it can get really messy and complicated, and you really should be using an attorney. There are just too many things that can go wrong, and it can get really complicated on how to fix them. So, although it's good for you to know all this information, I highly recommend using an attorney if you're thinking about international patent protection at all. If you want help with drafting your patent application, you can contact me through my website at patentingforinventors.com, that's patentingforinventors.com, or call Diamond Patent Law at 424-281-0162. I'm Adam Diamond, and until next time, keep on inventing.
Thanks for listening to the Patenting for Inventors podcast with host Adam Diamond. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review on iTunes. The contents of this podcast are intended for general informational purposes only. The facts of every legal matter are unique, and the content of this podcast should not be construed as offering legal advice for your specific legal situation. For more information and help with your own intellectual property needs, contact Adam Diamond at patentingforinventors.com. That's patentingforinventors.com. Or call Diamond Patent Law at 424-281-0162. The preceding information may be considered an attorney advertisement and does not establish any attorney-client relationship.